Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm JD Davidson. Another challenge to Act 10 is ongoing, with lawyers arguing aspects of the law that have been argued and dismissed before. For a week, judges reheard the same arguments from public employees who continue to be concerned about the Act's impact. Joining us today is Ben Yount, Wisconsin contributor for the Center Square. Ben, tell us more about this court case and where things stand as of now.
This is the latest challenge to Act 10, and people in Wisconsin will never forget, but Act 10 brought the circus to Wisconsin. Literally, there was a point after it passed where The Daily Show sent John Oliver to the Wisconsin Capitol on a camel. And I remember watching that and thinking, this is amazing, because all of the anger, all of the frustration was over the idea that teachers in Wisconsin will, one, have to pay a little bit more for their guaranteed retirement, and two, school districts would gain some leverage over teachers' unions. No longer would teachers' unions come in with a new contract, drop it on the table, say take it or leave it, and walk out. There were limits as to just what teachers' unions could ask for. That's what Act 10 did. It rebalanced the power. Let
me interject with your Daily Show. I think this is to relate to how long this has been going on. Yesterday, I was rewatching a show on HBO that I feel is at least 10 years old, if not older, called The Newsroom. Mm-hmm. And its first season, 4th or 5th episode, all of the sudden, Scott Walker and Wisconsin teachers and Act 10 shows up in this show from a decade ago.
Yeah, that's how long we've been talking about Act 10. That's how long I've been writing about or dealing with Act 10. And that's how long that unions and Democrats here in Wisconsin have been hating on Act 10. And they've challenged the law several times. It's been to 2 federal courts, plus all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And each and every time a judge has said, no, this law is constitutional. No, the legislature had all the power that it needed in order to pass this new law. Voters in Wisconsin remember the recall effort where they tried to flip the legislature back to Democrats. That effort failed. They tried to recall Scott Walker. He won that election. This has now been settled law for over a decade. And by the way, it's been successful from the standpoint of local schools and local governments. It saved billions upon billions of dollars for taxpayers. But the unions, Democrats in Wisconsin, are back again. And the legal argument here is unique. It's an equal protection argument, and it has nothing to do with teachers' unions. But again, a teachers' union is driving this challenge. The judge in the case heard the argument, and it boils down to Act 10 separated people out into one of 2 categories. You had sort of exempt and you had non-exempt. And the argument was, well, UW police and Capitol police are non-exempt. They're included in the Act 10 limitations. But Wisconsin's Department of Transportation vehicle inspectors are included in the exempt group. They're not covered by Act 10's negotiation limits. Neither are police officers or firefighters. And the sort of the claim from the union lawyers is that, well, Governor Walker did this in order to reward his political friends in law enforcement and to avoid a strike. And that's not allowed. And so therefore you should toss the entire law out. The judge, who, by the way, it was uncovered this week, signed the Walker recall petition. So he's not a fan of Governor Walker. The judge in the case pressed and asked the union, why shouldn't we just reorder these law enforcement exempt and non-exempt groups? Why do we have to toss the entirety of the law out? Why can't we just fix this one issue that you're arguing here today? Now, the real answer is that this has nothing to do with vehicle inspectors and state capitol police officers. The goal here is to get this case, to get a challenge to Act 10 up before the Wisconsin Supreme Court by hook or by crook, because there's a sense that the newly liberal majority court will overturn it simply because since the newsroom days, since the Daily Show camel days, since 2011, Democrats in Wisconsin have stewed and hated Act 10. And so there's a very real possibility that this new liberal majority court could simply interpret the law as it sees fit and strike the entire law down.
So are we finished with arguments now in this case? Or, I assume the group that bought the case is just hoping for a loss right now, and let's keep moving.
This was a hearing to dismiss. And even the judge said, so what do we do after this? I mean, do we have evidentiary hearings? How do we move forward? So this was the beginning. But yeah, it doesn't, win or lose. The idea is to then appeal and get this to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Now, the timeline here is they got to do this before next spring, because in 25, there's going to be another race for Supreme Court. And that could change the makeup of the Supreme Court, and that could lead to a flip. All of this action has happened because the court, which was solidly conservative for a decade, flipped to liberal, and now we could see another race coming up just around the corner that could flip it back to conservative. Like I said, this is the story that has not ended for more than a decade and will not end anytime soon here in Wisconsin.
And based on what we've talked about for the past several months, I feel like the new makeup of the Wisconsin Supreme Court may be in session from now until that election and never take a break, with so many things that seem to want to get to it before another election can take place.
That's part of the difficulty here. That's part of the concern for Democrats, is that there is so much that they want to deal with. We still haven't had a Supreme Court ruling on abortion. Right to work is also possibly on the to-do list. Concealed carry is possibly on the to-do list. Then you have all of these sort of new cases that have come up, friction between the governor and the legislature. There's an awful lot that Democrats in Wisconsin would love to undo, but they can't legislatively, so they have to do it judiciously. And yeah, the sort of to-do list is getting so long that it may be a to-don't list if they wait too long.
Absolutely. And we will certainly be watching all of that. Ben, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
He ran for state office and was beaten. Started a business and failed. Ran for Congress and lost. But thankfully, Abraham Lincoln didn't give up. Persistence. Pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.